back to the next Friday's iteration of my series of myself and want to leave behind me. Teach others. We're deeply into the business plan. I'm trying to educate my colleagues back in the 1980s and 90s about how to create practices that would allow them to exit the healthcare delivery system and to be only dependent on whatever financial arrangements they made with their own clients in order to support themselves. Uh, I was particularly focused last time on the really, really important features and needs of conducting the first session. Treating the first session is perhaps the most important session that any of us will hold with a client ever. I had done all the preliminaries about managing phone calls, how to talk on the phone, how to begin to make arrangements, how to answer questions, how to be patient with people who had a lot of things they wanted to explore with you before they ever came in. And now let's move on. Let us assume you've been successful in managing the initial inquiry and they're willing to come see you for that session, which I'm urging you to provide for free. It keeps you out of all kinds of troubles if you provide for free. You necessarily have to answer all the questions because now you have a reason that you can answer all their questions very fully, hopefully in face-to-face fashion when we unfreeze ourselves. And you're not taking on the responsibility of having them as a client. You've not agreed to begin a relationship with them yet, which makes you legally responsible for all kinds of complications if they leave your session and go kill themselves. But if you're not their therapist yet, you're not their psychologist because no agreement has been made up until the ending of the first session, then I think you're in a much bigger position to reject people you don't want to work with, to work out special arrangements with them. It gives you a degree of freedom, just as it gives them a degree of freedom to reject you if they don't like what they're experiencing when they see you. They can reject you without as much stigma attached to it or as much difficulty, interpersonal difficulty in saying, no, I'm not coming back. So, all right, the day has come. When you get permission to set up an appointment, absolutely try to do it the very next day. What is the old saying? Strike while the iron is hot. People have screwed up often their maximum amount of courage to get the courage up to talk to you. And don't let it dissipate. Get them in while they're still overcoming their own resistances to beginning the work. If you have to cancel somebody else for a day, do it. If you have to open up space in some other way, do it. If you have to come in an hour early, do that. If you have to stay an hour later, do that. But if you can possibly in any way see them the very next day after you're having this conversation with them, see if you can arrange that, because that's sending an important signal too. The signal is you matter to me and I take you seriously and I'm willing to explore the beginning of the work as soon as possible and not keep you waiting for a long period of time. All right, the day is here. They're in your office. They're in your waiting room at least. And you go out to greet them and they come in, they follow you. Uh, my opening line is sit wherever you'll be comfortable. My office is like a living room. They can sit on a couch, a love seat, various chairs that are in there. In some ways, it's diagnostic where they pick to sit. They often ask me, well, where are you going to sit? And I simply answer, I'll sit where I can see you. That's where I'll sit. And I pick a seat after they sit down. The biggest warning sign I've seen over the years is people who sit very close to the door. It's almost like they're getting ready to flee as quickly and as easily as possible. So they're carrying some high degree of anxiety about being there, which is signaled by where they pick to sit. Now, what do you do? If you've had strict psychoanalytic training, you sit there and let the silence build up and let the tension and frustration and anxiety build up. And under no circumstances do you say anything because you're not to shape or control what's going on there. You're supposed to let the client present himself or herself and work with whatever is the awkward procedure by which they do that. I don't like that. I think that's very frustrating. It's turned out over the years as I've experimented, there are two kinds of starting rituals. Increasingly, as the public has become more psychologically aware and more psychologically sophisticated, many people show up with something that they're eager to tell you about. You don't have to wait. If you wait for 2 seconds, they'll start. They'll tell you about they'll give you their diagnosis. They'll tell you what they looked up online and other articles they've been reading and memories they have. As a matter of fact, they will go on. If you don't interrupt them, they will go on and they will go on and they will go on for many minutes. I don't like, oops, I don't like having them go on for many, many minutes. I'm not sure why. It's because I want to give a message early, not too early. I don't want to be impolite. I don't want to interrupt them. But over the years, I discovered if they come in and start giving me a lot of material, after a while, I feel like I'm having trouble paying attention. And I did a lot of introspection. What's that about? And it is what I announced to them. I tell them, I hate to interrupt you, and you go on after you listen to me, but I need to establish something else with you first. I feel like many things you're telling me are very important. I can't prioritize them. I don't know what I want to let go for the time being, so you could tell me some more, what I want to pick up and follow, because I'm already engaged with some of the things you told me, and I would like to say more about it or hear more about it, but I don't know what we're doing here together. So, what I'd like you to tell me is what is the purpose of your being here today? Give me a hook I can hang things on, and then I'll be able to listen in a better way. Because I want you to meet this purpose. I want this appointment to be meaningful to you. And whatever your purpose is for sitting here today, I'd like to move in the direction of actualizing and meeting that purpose that you're bringing. That's an important message. It tells them right away that they're in charge in some ways. I can only be their companion, their consultant, somebody who works with what they're attempting to do, but I need to know something about what their intent is. Could be a stupid one. I want to feel better. I don't know what gets said, but they'll come up with something that they tell you what the intent is. And then you'll be able to listen with a more educated ear to whatever else they want to go forward with. So if it's one of the people in this first category, stop them to define the purpose and then let them keep running until they've exhausted all the things they've prepared themselves to say to you. I'd be very surprised if that took up the whole session, but you can let them go on for some minutes more. I actually like the other group better. These tend to be working class people who are not terribly psychologically minded, maybe first or second generation immigrants who don't know the American culture very well and don't know why it is they've come to a psychologist. Somebody's told them to come and show up. There's a kind of pure honesty about that kind of sitting in the office. And they treat you like you're the expert and they wait for you to instruct them what they're supposed to do. And it's like going to the doctor. Please take off your clothes and put this gown on and get over on the couch over there so I can examine you. You're supposed to lead, and they will dutifully follow if you lead. Well, I lead them in a strange direction. I come up with the same question. You know, the way I'd like to start is, would you please tell me what the purpose of your being here is today? I again put responsibility back on them. And one way or another, with both groups of people, I teach them that they're responsible. And I'm a companion who is a consultant and has some wisdom and can be helpful. But they're in the driver's seat. I'm not. I want them to drive. All right. So now we go. We're into the session. Words are coming from one or the other of them, these categories of people, and you're listening. Uh, I like dividing the initial interview up into three segments. If you do 45 minutes of work, because that's what we typically bill for now, you have three 15-minute segments. You can let some of them be longer than others, but within the first 15 minutes, you must meet what I consider your essential purpose in the first section of the initial interview. And that is to demonstrate that you have a capacity to understand and that you have a capacity to care. The building of the empathic bond and the working alliance has to start. Uh, I can't tell you how to do it. There's a lot of dispute in our field. Is the capacity for empathy a human talent that's simply distributed normally? Some people have more of it, some people have less of it. Or is it something that can be trained, people can be learned better? I know in introductory courses in psychology programs, we teach them to say certain kinds of psychobabble, like, I understand, or that must have been hard for you. Whatever it is we teach them is psychobabble that will supposedly show that you're empathic. And I want to warn you, it doesn't work. If it's words you're saying, if it's not a genuine you being expressed, the client will hear the phoniness of it somewhere below the surface. He or she may not react to it or may not even be consciously aware of it, but the phoniness will come out. Your authentic self has to start caring about them. You have to find something worthwhile about them, even if they seem like an odious person. You have to find something lovable about it. You have to be able to appreciate their pain that they're bringing you, because nobody's coming without some pain, and that you have compassion and understanding for that pain. So that is the grand task of the first 15 minutes. In the second 15 minutes, you have a second challenge now. I've put a strange label on it. You have to demonstrate that you possess some wisdom that's important for them. Uh, Many people in the field just use the first session for information gathering, and they keep all their cards close to their own chest. They don't do anything or say anything that would seem to be helpful in any way. They're saving that for when therapy proper starts, when it's not an intake interview anymore. No, you need to show them something that you can make a difference. You could advance their life in some way, even beginning with the first session. And then you go on from there with the two of you working with whatever you've offered that you think might be experienced as being helpful to them. And you arrive at the third of the session. You're getting ready to do several things. You're getting ready to inquire and discuss the possibility, are there going to be any more sessions? You're going to begin to take up some administrative details about how billing will work, what you'll do if appointments are missed. That's the time, close to the end of the first session, that you could do those administrative things without screwing up how the work starts and what it's all about. But the one thing you must do that I don't know other colleagues who do, you must tell them what your treatment plan is going to be. If they're going to come back to you, they need to have some knowledge about, well, what are the subsequent sessions going to be all about? What is it that we're going to be talking about with each other? What homework might I be giving you? Is there somebody else in your life I think should come and attend these sessions? What is it you plan to do, at least over the next few sessions, if they come back? Then, then finally, you end the session by setting a fee. You negotiate that with them and you ask them, well, you can say to them, you've had an experience now of how I work and what goes on when we sit together and talk to each other. Are you finished? It's possible you've actually untangled the knot they've come with in the first session and they don't feel like they need to come back. Are you finished, or would you like more sessions? Uh, then you see what happens. What you'd like to have happen is, oh no, this has been very good. I'd like to come back and see you some more. Uh, if you're working effectively in the first session, maybe 60 to 70% of the time, that's what you'll be hearing from the clients. If there are other issues and that are still in hiding, you might hear, I don't know, I'm not sure. Please send them away. Do not try to capture them. If they're ambivalent and they hesitate about going on, tell them, hey, it looks like they need time to think about it. So you'll be here. You'll be glad to hear from them. If they want further sessions, you certainly will make them a priority and begin the work that you talk to them about in the subsequent sessions. And that is what you do in the first session. Now, I have a wonderful teaching example. This session was the purest, most beautiful, most illustrative of how I want to work. God bless the client of any of I've had. All the rest are a little bit muddier, or they don't quite do exactly what I hope is going to happen. They're like real life. It's never perfect. This was a perfect first session. Uh, the young man, he was about, I think, 32, 33 at the time, came in. He had been agitated and wanting to see me very quickly. And I had made an appointment for him the next day. And he told me he had relationships problems. He was worried about his marriage. He said that much of it. And when I explained to him I'd be very happy to see him without charging him, he was very relieved and said, could I see you tomorrow? And I said, yes, I'll find you a time tomorrow. This sounds urgent, so let me hear what's troubling you about your marriage. In he came. And he looked to me, he waited for me to start. And I said to him, what's the your being here today? And he said, I have to decide today whether to divorce my wife. And that felt like I could wrap my head around that. That seems like a very clear purpose to me. As I said, obviously we're going to have a conversation about turbulence going on in your relationship with your wife, and it's serious enough that makes you question whether you could even bear staying there for much longer. And you'd like my help in making a decision today whether to divorce her. So have at it. Tell me what's been happening in your relationship. My daydream was he was going to tell me he caught his wife in bed with his best friend, but that wasn't the scenario at all, much to my surprise. Uh, his wife's name was Cindy. He said, Cindy and I have been married for 2.5 years now, and it started off so wonderfully. Matter of fact, even the years before we were married, they had a kind of glow about them. And ever since the day we got back from our honeymoon, and that was idyllic, that honeymoon, I have found myself closing down a little more, a little more, a little more each day. I found myself having less and less to talk to her about. The interval between episodes of being sexual with each other is getting larger and larger. When I came back from the honeymoon, we were making love 3 or 4 times a week. It's now 2.5 years later. It's gone down to once a month. And I really am gnashing my teeth and forcing myself to. I don't feel like having intercourse with her at all. And I'm making all kinds of excuses. I feel like the classic woman. We get in bed and she looks at me. Some even talks about wanting to have sex, and I tell her I tweak my back, it's hurting, or there's too much stress at work. I have an endless variety of excuses for not wanting to be sexual with her. But to tell you the truth, if you ask me why I'm not being sexual with her, I have no answer. I don't know why I'm not being sexual with her. She doesn't seem to have changed at all. She's sweet, she's kind, she's attentive to me, she tries to be. And I don't know, maybe I'm bored. I don't know what happened. And I said, well, maybe you need to tell me more. Well, why don't you back up? When did you first meet her? About how old were you? And what was the process of getting to know her? And then what happened after that? So they met in college. They were college sweethearts. And he was very concerned because he'd been offered a job out of town and they were going to separate. And he was very disappointed. They tried having a long distance relationship, but he missed her a lot, and he managed to get himself transferred. What the hell was he in? He was in real estate. He was a real estate lawyer. That's what it was. he gotten transferred to another firm, and he came back to the city, and they picked up their relationship again, and he enjoyed all his dates with her. They managed not to argue very much. When they would argue, they would tease each other about what they were arguing about. They had a fairly harmonious relationship, one of the better ones I've ever heard about. And then it started to get complicated when they came into their late 20s. Oh, she's a year older than he was. She was, I think, 29. He was 28. She said her lease was up on her apartment. They were spending almost every night together, anyhow, either in his place or her place. And she said she thought it was time for them to live together, and they would probably learn a lot about what it's like being with each other if they tried doing it full time. And she was up for the challenge, and there were good economic reasons for doing it because they would certainly save one rent, and she'd be willing to move into his place, or she would go there for a while, and then the two of them would pick some place that would be a place that both of them had picked out. And but she was very flexible, but she did want to start living together. He freaked out. He started to protest. He said, everything's going so well. Things are so good between the two of us. If we do this, it's going to ruin our relationship. We're going to start fighting about things. It's going to get much more problematic. I don't believe in fucking with something when it's going well. And she said, I have hopes for us. Come on, screw up your courage. What is the worst thing that's happening? Or we'll decide we don't want to live together anymore, and we'll separate. But we'll learn a lot. We'll learn a lot about, does either of us have habits that are really obnoxious? Is it really irritating to be with each other that many hours every day? What do we need to do to find solitude for ourselves? Can we tolerate that? What are the rituals of coming and going? Who are we going to be friends with? Are we going to be friends as a couple? We're going to go off and spend a lot of time with separate friends and not share our friends with each other. A lot of practical things that we're going to encounter, and it's worth working on them. Let's see what happens. So she finally convinced him after nagging him many, many, many times as her lease got closer and closer to expiring. And the argument that got to him the best was the financial argument. She mentioned we could use the money we save and take a really wonderful vacation together. And he succumbed. And much to his surprise, uh, disaster did not happen. Yes, they started fighting about all kinds of things they hadn't had to fight about before, but they learned to problem solve and to work things out. They even had the courage to meld their finances and put all their finances in a common pot and make a budget with each other, something I see too many couples avoiding doing. And so everything was hunky dory as far as he was concerned. Then she turned 30 and she turned 31. And she said, you know what? Like every woman, I'm thinking about children. I myself do not know if I want to have children, but I'd like to have the option of having children. And you know what? I am a traditional woman in some ways, even though I'm a career person. I don't want to have a baby without a husband who is willing to be a father to that baby. So I'm not asking you to commit to becoming a father. I'm just asking you to marry me. I want to bring a baby up in a marriage. I don't want to be a single mother or have a baby in something that feels a little bit tenuous because the two people are only living together. I think the child deserves a stronger bond between the two parents, and I would like you to propose to me now. Now he really freaked out. Under no circumstances was he going to do that. All the people, his parents are divorced. All the people he knows in his parents' generation are either divorced or living miserable lives with each other. And look, he pointed out some friends they have. They had made young marriages in their early or middle 20s, and they were already miserable with each other. Some of them had even gotten a divorce. And he said, I'm not going to go down that road where one of the likely outcomes is I'm going to have to get a divorce. I'd much rather just live with you until we burn this out, and then we'll separate from each other. And she said, but I'm not prepared to have a baby with if that's the rules of engagement between the two of us. He said, I'm sorry, stop nagging me. So she loved him and she kept trying. Every few weeks she would bring it up again. Are you sure you haven't reconsidered? Are you sure you won't even experiment with being married? So your parents got a divorce. We could get a divorce too if it turns out to be awful. We could even get a divorce where there's a child already. You're not trapped forever in concrete if you agree to marry me. You were experimental and willing to explore being someone who I lived with. Won't you come and marry me and explore what it's like? Because I believe that the ceremony does change people in some ways and does change the flow between the people. Won't you please come and try it on at least? No, he kept refusing. So she's getting to be 33 already and they're still living together. One day she came home from work and she said, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've stopped asking you whether you're going to marry me. She said, it was futile. I didn't like myself. I was turning into a nagging bitch. I was bringing up the same thing over and over again, getting angry and hurt and disappointed when you would give me the same answer over and over and over again. So let me tell you this. I am going to start dating, she said to him. I have to look for a man who has more courage about enhancing the intensity of a relationship than you do at this point. I meant what I said. I want to think about the possibility of getting married, and I want to find a man who's willing to entertain not only the possibility that we might become parents together, but that man would have the courage to live with me in a married state. And she said, as a matter of fact, there's a guy at work who's come to join the work staff recently, and he's been flirting with me. And I told him that I'm a married woman, but he doesn't stop. He says very appealing and flirtatious things to me. He said, would you at least go out to dinner with me, even if you're a married woman? And I told him I would go out to dinner with him tomorrow night. So I won't be home for dinner tomorrow night. I'm going to be going out with him. And his jaw dropped. She called his bluff, and she was actually starting down the path of separating from him. She said, uh, I will move out at the end of the month. It's going to be a while till I get there, and you're going to be stuck with this lease. But in between, I'm going to start dating, and I'm grieving for what I think we could have had but don't have. Nevertheless, I'm going out to dinner with him. So she had two more dates with him before the end of the month. And she came home on another evening and he said, I have something for you. He says, what's that? And he got down on one knee and he said, I've been a fool. Will you marry me? And she started to cry, tears of joy and relief, and said, thank you. I hope this won't be too hard for you. I'm not going to bite you. I'm pretty sure you're not going to discover anything awful. And we'll set the wedding date and get working on that after a while, after the truth of what's happening sinks in. For now, I'm just happy to tell everybody we're engaged and we're starting to plan the wedding. And I'd encourage you to do the same with your family and your friends, which he proceeded to do. And they set a wedding date about 6 months later. Her father was wonderful. She came from a fairly wealthy family. He gave them a 10-day honeymoon in Tahiti as their wedding present from him, all expenses paid. And much to his surprise, he enjoyed the wedding planning. And as far as he was concerned, the day of his wedding was actually the best day of his life. He had no reservations, no doubts, no fears, just the bliss of being with 150 of their nearest and dearest, celebrating their union, toasting each other, and having a wonderful time. And off they went to Tahiti. And Tahiti was glorious. The place was beautiful. They made love 2 and 3 days most days. They would get out of the pool, out of the ocean, and get back in their bedroom quickly and have at it each other. They swam naked in the Pacific. The water temperature was glorious. And he couldn't imagine 10 more beautiful days of his life with somebody who was just adorable and dear. But as he told me, starting with the day coming home, some kind of strange shutting down and detaching was taking place. So I that took up about the first third of the session. I was sufficiently engaged, caring. I think he trusted me. I got to the point now I have to start showing some wisdom. So before I did, I asked him, did he seemed psychologically minded and like an intelligent young man, did he have any theories about what was happening to him? He said, yeah, he did. He said he didn't like any of them. I said, what are your theories? He said, one of them is maybe I'm just not grown up enough. Maybe it's not time for me to marry anybody. Maybe I need to adventure some more, have some other relationships, learn more about life, make sure I've sampled enough close relationships that I have a better idea about who I am and what I should be doing with somebody. Maybe I'll grow into a state of readiness for marriage some years from now. I said, that's a good theory. That's certainly a possibility. Anything else? He said, maybe I should just never get married. Maybe there's something about me that will lead to this outcome. It doesn't matter who the partner is or how good it is. Maybe I'm not, as my mother used to say about some of her friends, that maybe I'm not marriage material. Maybe my best life is to have a close relationship with somebody for a period of time. And then when it starts getting troublesome, I'll know it, like the signals I'm getting now. And maybe it's time with pain and regret to extricate myself and just move on, live single for a while, and then maybe start looking for the next one. I would hate being that person, but maybe that's the person I am. I said, that's a good theory too. And I said, I think I may have another one, but I need some more information. He said, what do I need to tell you? I said, well, I need to know under what it was like in adolescence as you got ready to leave home, and then how and when you finally left home. And now what is the remaining relationship as a separated and now married person, married to somebody else? What's the nature of your relationship you're carrying on with your father and your mother? And how did that start after you left home? And what is arrived at now? And from the when I started this particular speech, he looked like I had jammed him with a cattle prod. He sat bolt upright in his chair, and I could see he was getting agitated. He's his response after I stopped talking was, "It was horrible." I said, "What was horrible?" He said, "My parents divorced when I was 14." And they went to war promptly, and I was a hostage in that war. Each one was trying to tell me how terrible the other person was, and they were asking me to listen to their side of the story and to be loyal to them. And each one of them, they got into a custody battle. Each one of them wanted me to repudiate my other parent and to agree to testify to the custody evaluator that the other parent was horrible and that I should live full time with one or the other of them. And I was pulled at all the time, and I was being scripted and counseled. And my mother was particularly vicious, and she lost the custody battle. She had me most of the time, and my father got every other weekend and Wednesday nights to spend with me. And he was furious and upset, and she kept reminding me what a scumbag he was, that the reason he broke up the marriage is he started to have a love affair with that whore, his secretary, and now he's living with her. And he hated that I had to go over and spend any time with that disgusting woman. She was going to try and go back to court and get the court to rule that when he had visitation, it could only be him and not his fucking whore that he was spending time with. And I was trapped in that too. Oh, and he would come and pick me up, and she would go out to the car and drag me and say, well, you get to get him now, but I'm telling you, I don't want him around that fucking whore you have, and you're a piece of shit, and he should hate going with you, and I'm going to make sure that he gets you out of his life one way or another. She was unremitting. So his adolescence was pretty miserable. And as a matter of fact, the tension and the constant litigation and the misery that his father was subjected to led his father to decide that he was going to move. He had married the woman he was with, and he was in a business where they had a branch in New York City, and she had relatives there. And he was simply going to move to New York City, and maybe they would change the visitation agreement, and he would get some time with me here and there. Well, I treated him like crap because I was getting busy with my friends and my own activities, and I didn't want to go to New York for a month in the summertime. I started to resist going with him, and he eventually gave up. And by the time I was 18, I didn't see him anymore. I didn't talk to him. I didn't see him. He would send me presents on my birthday. He would send me a card occasionally, but he was out of my life. And so I interrupted him and said, has anything happened to heal that breach between the two of you over the years? No, I haven't seen my father since just before I was 18. I'm now in my 30s. I know he's still living in New York. I hear word from him from one of his brothers, an uncle I'm still in touch with, but no, I've had no contact with him at all. I stopped trying to contact him, and he stopped trying to contact me in any way. So on I went, and I said, so what happened with your mother? And he said, well, it got really difficult. I graduated high school. I got very good grades. I applied to some good universities on the East Coast and some in the Pacific Northwest. And my mother put her foot down and she said, you're not leaving me. You have to stay here and live at home with me. And you can only go to a university here in Southern California. He said, I want to go to a good university. So she said, get into USC or get into UCLA, but you're not going anywhere and you're living at home as long as you're in college. Now, your father's not paying anything for you anymore. I control the purse strings, and I'm not going to pay for any college tuition for you unless you continue to live at home. And he argued with her. He said, my friends are going away to other places. I don't care what your friends are doing. I need you here. You do things for me. And he had become very handy and helpful. He would fix leaking toilets. He would change toilet seats. He would change light bulbs. He would fix stuck garbage disposals. And she was constantly turning to him. As a matter of fact, he took over her bookkeeping. She was bad with figures. He started balancing her checkbook and writing the bills for her at the end of the month. He was very useful in her life. He did lots of the things that his father used to do because she was child woman. She didn't know how to get car service, none of that. He had to become competent and become the male of the household at a very young age, and she was not going to divorce him. 2 years in, he got admitted to USC. 2 years in, uh, two of his friends were going to rent a house in the West Adams district within walking distance of the campus. They were going to leave the dorms, and they were going to take over the house and maybe get one or two more roommates. Those big old mansions are very large, and they invited him to come pick up his share of the lease and live communally with them, and they would have a rollicking good time in that house that would be their home. So he told his mother that that's what he was doing. And she said, no, you're not. She started the same complaints and the same recitation of needs for him. And he was beside himself. He said he didn't care. He found his cojones, and he said he didn't care what happened. He was leaving. She said, I'm going to kill myself if you leave. And she threatened suicide. And he said, I am going anyhow. But he reassured her, Mom, I'll still go to a movie with you on the weekends. We'll still go out to dinner one night, and I'll still help you with your grocery shopping and any other chores you need. I will not abandon you, but I'm just not going to live in this residence anymore. So she didn't die. He moved out and finished college, and then he even moved to New York for a while to a different job. But he came back again, and I learned it was partly because his mother was always crying out in pain and guilt tripping him that he had moved so far away. It wasn't only the presence of his girlfriend that brought him back, it was his relationship with his mother, too. So I said, all right, we're going to be out of time in about 15 minutes. So I want to tell you something. I'm going to tell you that there's some work that needs to be done. First of all, please explain to me, how does Cindy view your mother, get along with her? Does she see your mother as a terrible pain in the ass, as intrusive and ruining your life with each other? No, she understands my relationship with my mother is special to me, and I'm ambivalent about it. I feel a duty to watch over her, and at the same time, I annoy the burden, and she bothers the hell out of me, but she is not, she doesn't protest much about doing it. And actually, there are things about my mother that Cindy actually enjoys, and they spend time together without me. Well, what's that? I asked. Well, my mother is a wonderful decorator. She has great taste in fixing spaces up, and she's a wonderful shopper. So Cindy likes, whenever she gets tired or bored with the apartment, she gets mom over, and they look, and mom suggests that the drapery should be changed. They're getting shabby, and helps her pick out fabric. Every time Cindy goes clothes shopping, she takes mom with her because she has wonderful taste in clothes, and Cindy likes having a personal shopper that helps her outfit herself. I said, that's very fortunate, because if you come back, I want Cindy to come to the next session. She said, uh, oh, and there's some things you have to do even before that. You need to tell Cindy you've been lying to her, that you've been getting restless about your relationship with her. It's even reached the stage where you're not sure whether you want to go on with this relationship, and you've come to seek professional help. And the professional you've chosen has said that Cindy could have a great effect on the outcome of this turmoil that's going on, if she would be willing to come in with you for the next visit. And he said, what the hell would we be talking about? Well, first of all, you will have been honest with her. So I'd like to hear what happens from her after you're honest with her. And second of all, if she's to bear in and try and be your companion while you find where your path forward is, then there's some work I want her to do with your mother. I want her to take on more responsibility for your mother. In the evening, if mom calls and says their toilet is stopped up at 8 o'clock in the evening and she has to come over and do something with the plunger, I want Cindy to say to her, Mom, I'll come. He's very tired. He had a long and hard day at work. Let me come. I know how to unstop toilets. I'll be the one who comes. And increasingly, I would like her to show up when your mother has need, and not you. Mother can't get angry. She's not being ignored or dissed or not responded to. Just the person who's coming is somebody else. It's not you, it's her daughter-in-law. Now, there's literature in the family theories series of literature that suggests that if functions change within a system, the whole system changes. Everybody's ways of understanding things and doing things are altered. One person now takes up the duties that some other person had been fulfilling. It unfreezes everything. There's room for change to happen. I will make a prediction to you. Cindy is the one who's now steadfastly comes more and more. Your mother is going to call less and less. And she herself is going to start doing things. We're going to free her up from being as stuck as you are, because she's stuck in childlike behavior. And let's get her free of that, and let's get her to start moving. Uh, Second of all, here's more homework. Do you know how to get in touch with your father? Can you find out from your uncle what his phone number is? Yeah, I think I could do that. I want you to call him and say, Dad, I think it's been a mistake for us to be separated. Maybe we'll hate each other. Maybe it'll be stupid between the two of us. But would you be willing to explore the possibilities of spending a little bit of time with each other and just reflecting about the past and the hurts of the past, and what would a new relationship we might forge with each other in the future be? You've been cheated out of having any kind of reasonable male role model by the terribleness of your parents' marriage and how each of them behaved after that. Maybe your father has come into greater wisdom and is a different person. Maybe you could actually have a new relationship with him and fill this with something that might be meaningful to you. It's at least worth taking a crack at it. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to try and help you find a surrogate father who could fulfill those functions for you if your own father wouldn't. Because I think all we men, to some degree, are suffering from father hunger because fathers tend to be, even good fathers tend to be much more absent and aloof than our mothers are. And we need an older man in our lives of some kind. Maybe it could be your father. So down the road from that, after the first visit with Cindy, I might try and ask your mother to come in and share a session with you too, and do some direct work on what flows between the two of you. Those are some beginning thoughts I have. I'm going to work with you a lot individually, but I reserve the right, might even have your father on the speakerphone with you. So the three of us will be in a room talking to each other. I reserve the right to bring other people in and out of your life as the work proceeds. Now, one last thing I want to say to you, and then we'll settle practical matters like meeting times, fees, the rest of it. Uh, what the hell was the last matter? I've forgotten. Oh yes, I remember the last matter. I am going to fail you. I don't have a recommendation to you about whether you should stay in this marriage or not. I can't give it to you today. And I'll tell you what, if you start doing the kinds of work I have laid out for you, and we make some kind of progress, you will not need to ask me. You will know in a very heartfelt way whether it's time to leave Cindy or whether you want to stay with Cindy and continue to work to reform and reformulate your relationship with you. I'll be superfluous and won't have to make the call. But I promise you, I do make those calls. If I have couples in my presence or a person in my presence who I think is in a very, very self-defeating, unpleasant marriage, and I don't believe there's much chance of any fluidity of the making of it any better, I'll tell them I think they'd be better served by getting a divorce. I'm not shy about doing that. I just, from what I've heard, I don't want to embrace either of your two theories about the absolute need to be away from Cindy until I've tried my third theory about what might be happening with you, because my final comments are the family literature is also filled with the principle that one does not have the energy or skills to work well with a marriage until leaving home has been worked out effectively and properly, and one is truly free to get on to the next stage of one's life. You still have big pieces of you stuck back in being your mother's companion, and we have to free that up in order for you to discover whether you're fit material or interested in being married to somebody. So that was the end of my speech. And he came back and we did the work. And Cindy was available and she did start taking over. And I did have sessions with mother, and mother started growing up. As a matter of fact, after about 12 visits, the couple decided that they were working more freely. His sexual appetite came back for his wife. He was seeing his mother less and less. He was leaving home more effectively. And the life energy in the marriage came back. And they terminated with me. And I wound up working with the mother for 2 years, helping her to finish her own growing up, helping her to close out the bitterness she was feeling towards her husband, helping her to find companionship in other people, not just her son, and actually helping her to start dating again. So, much to my surprise, I inherited a different client than the one I started out with. Now, I am going to go back to the plan, the business plan. So, wait a second while I do some screen sharing here. I think this is it. There it is. Step two, I've been talking as I presented my formal presentation of the first visit about ways I think all of us have to change our technical stance. It's not only to reconceptualize what we do with the first visit, but look at the second point. It's illustrated in what I did in the first visit. I will be prepared as work with the client unfolds to change the intervention locus and or treatment modalities, inviting significant others to his or her consulting sessions as it appears desirable. Yes, we get locked into rigidifying the treatment relationship. We're going to have a weekly visit at 2 o'clock in the afternoon with so and so. And we will march through that on and on and on. It needs to occur to us that we might change the frequency of the visits depending on whether there's some work, good work going on outside the session and they could be left alone for longer periods of time, or intensify the work if some kind of crisis is beginning to evolve, see them more often. And if it's useful to do work directly on one or another of their relationships with somebody, a child, a spouse, a sibling, a parent, a boss, whoever, to invite them to consider bringing the person who is problematic into the work that we do together. It's wonderfully enlivening. I might make an aside that so many of my colleagues seem to get burned out. They get rigidified and ritualized, and they get almost to the edge of boredom with the work they're doing, and their work becomes more mechanical. It's not because it's because they don't have this experimental, playful attitude and experimental attitude I have towards the work I do. I don't feel at all burned out. I can't wait for more. I resent dying. I don't want to have to give it up. I want to keep doing it as long as I have breath and am capable of doing it. So I will pause at that point for a second because I'm going to leave this topic of changing technical stance go, and I'm going on. Up above, I talked about ways you could avoid wasting money in conducting your practice. Now I'm coming to ways you're going to enhance your practice. So your practice is going to grow and the billing goes up too. These are ways of doing that. Okay, I probably don't have to do many of these because this was done decades ago. So some of it is probably outmoded. If I have not already done so, I will design and post a website. So that's a wonderful thing to have. You can leave snippets of your thinking there periodically. You can podcast out there with your thoughts for the week. You can comment on interesting client dilemmas. It's a place where people could get to see who you are and how you work. And when new clients contact you, you can always tell them if they're interested in seeing more. There's much about you that might have relevance for what they're looking for in your website. When you call on potential referral sources too, you can tell them about your website. But I, I'm going to laugh about Psychology Today. It has a whole bunch of you can put some small statement up there. It has a bunch of boxes you can check. People, kinds of people you work with, usually diagnostic categories. It isn't a very human website. It doesn't. Your humanity is not to any degree posted on a Psychology Today information place. So again, this is to be self-administered. I ask people who take the workshop to look at these, if they can consider doing it, to check it off and to give themselves an assignment. What is the date by which they're going to do it? A time certain, they're going to make sure they take up this task of helping to enhance their practice and get more referrals and higher paying clients in. I will develop and print an attractive brochure that describes significant aspects of my practice, including billing, clients served, and the philosophy of care, and have it available to leave with potential referral sources. Aaron is an expert on this. He can talk about his ventures in seeking referral sources after we're finished together. I sent him on this mad journey. But if you have a potential referral source, it's nice to have a brochure by you to leave with them after you've made a contact with them. Later on, too, if you're going to have some kind of public lecture, which I'm going to advocate, you take a bunch of you can mention your website, but take brochures with you to the get-together you're having with your audience, because you can give them to anybody who comes up to talk to you afterwards. I will join and become active in my local, state, and/or national professional organizations and begin to do significant amounts of organizational work. Please consider doing organizational work for one of the organizations we belong to, a significant step in practice building and maintenance for yourself. Now that may sound strange because you're networking with people who are your competitors when you do these things. Why the hell would you want to do that? It's because every one of us in practice has some portion of people who we need to find care for other than ourselves. We may have occasional clients. We just don't have a taste for working with that kind of problem. We don't feel we're very good at it. We don't want to learn how to be better by taking it into our practice. So we want a good referral source. We have relatives and friends of people we're already seeing. So we don't want to get into dual relationships that could be compromising. We have our own relatives, our own spouses we may want to make a referral to. And we need to get to know colleagues, and we need to get to have some sense of what they're like as fellow workers, because we make a referral then to them with much greater freedom of heart and mind that we're making a sensible referral. And we want to be on the receiving end of referrals like that. So how are your colleagues going to get to know you? The two who are here with me and I have a wonderful relationship. We have a consultation group we do with each other each week, but there are very few of our colleagues who are doing that yet. And the best way to get to meet them is through work side by side with them in some professional organization, on a committee or on a board, where you see them regularly and get to talk to them. And in breaks and in leisure time, you're also talking about your own lives. Okay, here's another one. I will join and become active in at least 3 philanthropic, religious, advocacy, or educational organizations and begin to do significant amounts of organizational work. Uh, 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 please join ASPCA, the local chapter. Please get into the local chapter of the Sierra Club. Please donate some time to Habitat for Humanity. You will meet other people. If you can get into the organizational structure, it tends to be wealthy people are on the boards of these organizations. Go to the Los Angeles County Museum Association and volunteer time to do something for them, even if it's only stamping envelopes. Uh, you're seeding the possibilities for the future. This is particularly easy for young people who are starting out and have lots of discretionary time because they're not too busy yet. But it will pay off handsomely if you can work your way up the ladder of organizational responsibility and some major philanthropic, educational, religious organization. Because, as I said, you will be networking with the rich people. They'll know you're a psychologist and they will want to make referrals to you. So I'm asking people to choose at least 3 and then to hold themselves responsible for making a connection and offering to volunteer time and effort, make a monetary contribution, do something for that organization. Oh, I like this one. Most neighborhoods have throwaway newspapers. Uh, they are actually advertising rags wrapped around some newspaper contents like movie reviews. They reprint news from AP or somewhere else. Uh, Write some possible columns. Write a column on a popular topic. Maintaining vitality in marriage after 25 years, surviving divorce. I don't care what it is, a lonely hearts column of some kind. And I have 2 or 3 sample versions of the column and take it to the editor of the thing and say, they sometimes need copy. Would they be willing to publish your stuff? And if it comes out weekly, you'll promise you'll get them a weekly version of your column. And make sure when they print it, if you get taken up on your offer, it has your picture on it and it has your office location, address, and phone number at the bottom of the column so people can call you. Oh, that can be in some kind of slug of type too. Personal questions are welcome. And as a matter of fact, it can be a question and answer column after a while. If you start getting interesting questions from readers, you can use them as examples of things you want to know about. Next. Ah, this is still there out somewhere. I believe all the cable channels are still obligated to have a public access television channel that's available to viewers who want to put some content up under their First Amendment rights. Uh, uh, put together a program on some topic. Maybe you're interviewing guest people of interest that you know that you want to have on an interview. You're the only interviewer. Maybe you're the presenter teaching certain kinds of contents and ask that you can if you can have 30 minutes on public television to present your video. Actually, if they like what you're proposing, they'll lend the production crew. You don't have to film it on an iPhone. They'll set you up and they'll send you forwards, and you then ask to be featured in the wee hours of the morning. That your program should run at 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that, because you have troubled people suffering from insomnia, surfing through television channels, trying to find something interesting to watch. And you just might connect with a potential referral from what you put up and put there. And by the way, if you start getting some buzz, the local cable channel might move you to a continuing program rather than something that's only done periodically. Wait, I don't think it's the cable networks. I think it's the television stations in a community. Yes, part of their community responsibility is to make things available. So it's the channel fives, the channel twos, the channel fours, the channel 11s. That you should get in touch with to see if you could get access to putting a program on. And you want it in your own community anyhow. Next. There we go. I will develop notes for at least 7 different kinds of talks or public lectures on topics of vital interest to lay audiences and prepare myself to deliver those lectures. First is the tentative talks of your titles. Find 7 talks to give and the date by which you're going to accomplish having those titles and some idea of what the content's going to be. Next, find out where you can arrange speaking opportunities. There are lots of organizations that love having free speakers. Parents Without Partners, for example. Uh, what the hell is the organization of businesses in a community called? They meet in the morning. Uh, I'm forgetting. I'm having a senior moment. Well, all right, I'll let that go. I'm not going to get hung up on the name. One of my favorite CSPP graduates developed something. He joined the local business organization that meets for community support of each other, and they have breakfast once a month. And he proposed that he would like to present a topic. It's called Keeping Marriages Vital After 25 Years. Because most of the people who came, whether they be men business owners, females, whether they were shopkeepers, professionals, whatever they were, most of them were married. And he said, for that particular breakfast, let's invite the spouses too. So at least once a year, he would do this over and over and over again. And he got a lot of couples referrals from just having made that presentation. Uh, Religious organizations are happy to take you in frequently. PTAs are happy to take you in at the local school. Sex and dating problems in adolescence. Just think of things the community is interested in and struggle with. Parents without partners, yeah, I think I mentioned them. Uh, they're single people who are raising kids and having a devil's own time doing it. But find the organ. Oh, every high school, once the pandemic is over, has an adult education branch as a high school where it is supposed to present public lectures and public teaching on topics of interest to the grown-ups in the catchment area of the high school, not just have things for the students. And of course, every community college, every university in the area has an extension division, and you can approach the extension division because they have workshops and they have courses, and you can try going there to get something going that networks you with the public. There we are. I will develop at least one adult education, continuing education course on a topic of interest to the public and attempt to deliver it. The date on which you're going to do it, and which are the organizations, and what's the name of the contact person, and the date you actually did the task. Hold yourself accountable. Next, I will contact the following training programs and field placement settings and attempt to arrange a volunteered appointment as an adjunct professional supervisor. Go supervise students in training. You won't get paid for it. Some of them ask you to come to the site. Some of them will send a graduate student to your place. And again, you're going to get network with a graduate student. The graduate student is in a human network. The graduate student has friends. The graduate student has relatives. Some of those people need care. The graduate student can't deliver it, but the graduate student can certainly refer to you. And even occasionally, the graduate student may ask you after they've graduated and you're no longer their supervisor, would you undertake therapy with them? And of course you will. All right. So those are ways you can expand your availability to the public and to the public in ways that should result in generating more referrals to you. All right. Step two, here are other services you can do other than simply being a psychotherapist. You have a license, you can do other things. Aha. I know Aaron knows what I'm talking about, and I think Scott does too. You too can become one of your community school finders, uh, and you can market your services as a school finder. Ordinarily, when I've been out in the universe doing this, nobody knows what I'm talking about. We are in a blessed community or a cursed community in some way because we do have colleagues who are marketing themselves as school finders. And I haven't run into that in any of the other cities in the United States where I've given this workshop. People look at me blankly. And most people in this community still look at me blankly when I talk about this. These are colleagues who have specialized themselves as matchmakers. They will receive a kid whose parents think that the education this kid's getting is not best for the kid or not fitting for the kid. And they will do an evaluation if they need to. They certainly gather in any records they have. They'll gather in the academic records from the school the kid is currently attending. If the kid's been in therapy, they'll get in touch with the therapist. If any psychological testing of any kind has been done on the kid, they'll gather in that information. And after meeting the parents and hearing about what the parents' view of things is, and meeting sometimes with the child and getting to know the child some, they have staff or referral sources where they will do even more evaluative work of one sort or another until they assemble a really nice dossier on who this kid is, what the special challenges of this kid present, what the special things that would be nourishing to the kids might be in a school. And then the school finder suggests has a big Rolodex, or now it's probably automated in some ways, has an endless number of schools that the school finder has familiarized himself or herself with, and makes the suggestion about making a match. The school finder himself or herself has put in some reasonable amount of time calling on schools. That's what you have to do. You have to start familiarizing yourself through using Google to find places. What are the private schools in your neighborhood? Even of LAUSD, what are the strengths and weaknesses of various public schools? What are the magnet schools the kids can attend? And at least virtually in FaceTime or even by telephone, get in touch with people who are knowledgeable about that program, talk to them, and you start out with a creative lie. I have a kid who needs to move schools, so I'd like to learn more about what the specialness of your program, and interview them so you can start accumulating a dossier. If it's a private school, what's the tuition? Are the scholarships available? And on and on and on. So you accumulate your own database that it helps you. Now, this has wonderful tax implications too. So I would encourage you to start traveling, and wherever you go, call on schools in that community, particularly the private schools, and get familiar with the schools all around the nation. So if they want a fashionable prep school that gives wonderful education and is a feeder system for Harvard, and that's a good place for their child to go, you know exactly where to send them. And you have at least a talking relationship with someone there who knows who you are, and you can make the connection and maybe even facilitate the connection. I consider that very wonderful work, and it can turn into quite a full-time career. You can have as adjunctive services there, you might provide psychotherapy for the child. After you've done your placement of the child, you're no longer in a dual relationship. You can become the psychotherapist for the child or the family therapist for the family, and they already have a relationship with you. I like this one very much. If I had another life to live, I would be tempted to pull this one. Since I'm an elder person, though, I like the next one even better now. To the best of my knowledge, there are only two elder care finders in our communities. What happens? You have a parent who's starting to get demented or has really serious physical limitations now and can't live independently anymore. What the hell do you do with this person? Well, the elder care person does exactly what the school finder does. He or she has a vast array of resources. They are now networked to physicians who specialize in geriatric medicine. They know neurologists that can evaluate and psychologists that can evaluate cognitive deficit and decline. They've gone to visit all kinds of board and care places and all kinds of partial hospitalization places and all kinds of assisted living places, and they know the pros and cons of them. They know what they cost. They know what insurance plans they take or don't take because they've gotten the brochures and accumulated information on them. And the one I know who's a social worker here in Santa Monica has a lovely thing she does. She runs bereavement groups, and her bereavement groups start early in the process where kids are saying, oh my God, my parent is failing and I have to take over. They're starting to bereave the loss of the parent who once was. And she links them with others who are similarly afflicted, and they become a support group for each other, keeping each other company as they struggle with the new responsibility they now have. They're in what's caused the sandwich generation. They usually are still raising their own children or worrying about their young adult children, and suddenly they have to become at least partially the parent to their own parents. It's a very stressful time, and they can use all the social support they can get. Aha! I've never been interested in this. You can have a wonderful career taking on some clients as an outplacement counselor. What the fuck is an outplacement counselor? Well, American corporations have become a little wiser about being humane, and being humane in a way that protects their bottom line. They've had their share of suits they may have an HR department, but doesn't spare them from being sued sometimes for wrongful termination, or somebody wants to be put out in disability and their disability claims premiums are going up with the state, and they want to avoid having an adversarial relationship with employees who they are wanting to move out of the place and no longer have as employees. So what they now do is they have outplacement counselors, usually mental health professionals. If they're a very large corporation, they may have them on staff themselves. But if they don't necessarily need to do this often enough to merit having somebody on staff, so that they contract it out. You're their guy and inherit their outplacement counseling work. Typically, you meet with the person who's to be let go, and your empathic skills need to be in place. You need to be genuinely regretful about the turbulence they're now going to go through. Some of these are people who've worked for the same company for 20, 30, 40 years and are now being moved out. You don't want to, they don't, the company doesn't want an ageism suit. Uh, so they're usually given a golden parachute of as much as a year's salary, and they're told they will have the result of your services available to them at least for a year if they want them, and you will keep them by their side and keep them company while they find a new career startup, until they finally get located and placed with some other company where they can use their skills. So I consider this very noble work too. And it will tax you in very practical ways. You may wind up helping them to write resumes, helping to write cover letters, helping them to role play for a forthcoming employment interview, and noticing their dead spots and what they're not good at, helping them to be better, helping them to deal with feeling loss of purpose in life, grieving, bereavement, turbulence with their spouse, feelings of failure in the eyes of their children. You may do some family therapy as part of what you're doing. It's really wonderful work. I'm selling it to anybody who's interested. One of the things it requires is your own network. Do you know anybody that's in a significant position in a mid-sized corporation where you might be able to talk your way into being tried out as a outplacement counselor? Do you have any friends who are in HR positions in corporations? Because they're the ones who typically make the referrals to outplacement counselors. Uh, well, I'll answer questions from my audience here at the end of this, so I don't have to go on too much longer. And I think I need to stop now. My time is up, and I'm just getting started. So please unmute your own mics and have it me. And I don't know if you could hear it. I was sorry for the annoyance of email alerts coming in and dinging on my soundtrack while I was presenting.
Arthur, I have one question about the first session. Is there anything that you would do differently in the first session if your client is an adolescent?
No. Well, yes, I'm sorry. One occurred to me. Here's something I routinely do with an adolescent. I again approach the adolescents from a system perspective. I ask them, are they being sent here, or are they eager to talk to me? And most of them are not eager to talk to me. and I give them compassion. I would say, I think there are probably many things that are not working in the family, but your family is dealing with it by identifying you as the most obvious person who should get some professional help. And I'm not sure that you're the most obvious person who needs the professional help, even though the members of your family may have come to that conclusion. I'm sure there are many things that aren't working right. And I know for sure your parents are not perfect persons, perfect parents. So one of the things for sure I'm going to want to talk to you about is, if you had a magic wand that could transform your parents, what would you transform them into? How would that be different from how they're parenting you right now? And that might be the starting point that I would get into with an adolescent. Next.
Let's see. I guess I just wanted to add something to the idea of practice building, and the idea of that you have to be so persistent that it does take quite a while at the beginning to get some momentum going. That can be kind of disheartening in a way at times.
Yes, it is. It's like
Yeah.
cold calling. I mean, the return rate is not very great for the longest time. And I say to anybody who's starting out, I hope they have a day job that generates income for themselves, because my time frame is, even with consistent attempts at marketing oneself, it probably takes about 5 years before you can slack off and begin to feel more content. And by this time, you already have a nucleus of former clients, and slowly that gets larger and larger. And after a while, you can slack off entirely, because your former clients will serve as a rich enough pool of potential referral sources if you've done work well and in a meaningful way, that you don't have to do much anymore to market yourself further. I still like giving public lectures sometimes. Well, I do it because I enjoy the task, not because I necessarily need the referrals.
Yeah. Also, the idea of being a therapist for schools like graduate schools and getting, helping people do their didactic therapy. I found that over the years that's been a great source of, because they go on, they stay connected with you, they make
Yes,
referrals. Yeah.
I think that may be one of the ones that's here in my thing about adjunctive
Yeah.
services somewhere down below. But thank you for reminding me of that.
Yeah, it's a comprehensive list. That's a lot to get done.
Wait, I got more. I'm only barely getting started. We don't teach these things in graduate school, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
I also wanted to just stress the importance and significance and the greatness of consultation groups, and that your colleagues really get a chance to kind of get to know you, personally and professionally, and usually there's some referrals going on in the consultation group as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think this is the wave of the future, actually. But I've always been a futurist. All right, guys.
All
Okay.
Thank you
right.
for your help and cooperation again.
All
Let's
right.
see. I
Yeah.
have to get out of screen sharing in order to get out of here. There,
There
I'm
it
back.
is. All
And
right.
I can end.
All right. See you guys.
Oh,
Okay.
see you
Be
after the
well.
holidays. The next two
Happy
Fridays are
holidays.
holidays.
Yeah.
Okay.
Happy holidays.
We'll see.